Ric Flair was in the headlines, I suppose, the wrestling headlines earlier this week. He got into a bit of an altercation with, is it the manager of this pizza restaurant he was at, like a pretty big pizza place that was like, I believe it was next to a Holiday Inn. And I think the problem was that Ric Flair was waiting too long for this guy to get out of the bathroom. It must have been like a very small kind of like bathroom in the place that you, I don't know what you hell he had to waiting for a number two. I do not know, but it's just, and there's the video of Flair there going off on the people there, and it was just like he was like in a wrestling ring cutting a promo really. It was kind of like a car crash, it doesn't look good, but it's hard to keep your eyes off it. And saying about, I just want to I'll give you a grand tip just so I can say to the guy to go kiss my ass or whatever. And he's going on about, I got your restaurant over and all this stuff. It's like, I don't know, man. It's just Ric Flair always seems to be still living the gimmick. It was like, I remember Ultimate Warrior years ago saying that about Hulk Hogan. That Ric Flair's still living the gimmick. And there was this whole thing about him. This guy maybe like long hair, looked like Middle Eastern descent. He just called him an Egyptian, which you could say was a little bit outdated, saying that. And then there was something about a guy just sitting by, just trying to mind his own business, and then he made a comment to Ric Flair about, hey, you want to come outside with me? I'm not working here, but hey, he was just getting a bit fed up of Ric Flair's, big ego and his diva-like behavior. But on Vince Russo's channel, he was speaking about this earlier with Ben Hameen and Stevie Richards, and they got the title here as Ric Flair, the biggest con artist in pro wrestling history. And they were getting into about how Ric Flair, he can't let go of the gimmick, and that he's been quite shady in recent years. I got into that stuff with my video about some of the allegations with Flair. But then there's just other stuff there with Flair about, like, he doesn't seem to be a guy that you can trust. A lot of people in the business, when they do shoot interviews, say that Ric Flair's two-faced. I've noticed that's a very common thing that people say about Flair, being very nice to your face, but then he'll go and shit on you in an interview behind your back and stuff like that. And a lot of it as well is just about, all this stuff about, he didn't pay high spots, he owed them money. Was it not even, he owed Ring of Honor money, and then there's stuff about, apparently from what Russo's saying, he owed TNA money, and a lot of other people money. So I'm going to play just a short clip of this, and then afterwards I'll react, so here we go.
I was gonna go on Ric Flair because
bro, he's got to stop, man. He's got to just freaking stop. Go ahead, tell the story, Vin.
So there's two different stories right now. One is he buried this pizza place in Gainesville, Florida, after he said he spent $1,500 at a pizza place. That right there is strange.
Come on, bro.
That's a little beyond inflation.
On,
Yeah. Like, okay. But I just bought 500 pizzas. But I don't. If they had a bar there, I don't doubt that he ran up a $1,500 bar tab. I'll say that. And then based on who he is, didn't want to pay it, and things got heated. But that's just me speculating. Is he buried the kitchen manager for being in the bathroom? So I don't know if that means he went in there and dropped a dirty bomb and Rick had to walk in there, or if it means that he was waiting for his food and he had to wait an extended amount of time and he's a superstar. But I guess the restaurant manager just responded on Twitter, putting over his staff that they handled the situation properly and they stand behind them for good teamwork or what have you. There was a rib response of where somebody trolled saying they were a manager of a sister company and that Flair was inebriated and he wooed in a blind grandmother's face and shit. So that made me laugh more, but that's plausible as well, right? So there's been plenty of stories of Rick running up bar tabs like that and then trying to back his way out or pass the check on to somebody else because they got to hang out with Rick at the bar for 4 hours, So,
bro, how old is he? 80 what?
8,000 years old.
I mean, how do you get yourself in trouble at that age? Like, serious, like, come on, man. Like, really, bro? Like, oh man, bro,
it's the danger. It's the danger of hanging on to your on-air character for a little too much, for a lot too long. And we were in TNA. I remember like even Ken Anderson and Daivari and all these guys just fawning over like how Rick lives his life and spends money and is not responsible, and they think it's the coolest thing ever.
Unbelievable, bro.
You've witnessed that, right? Many times.
Oh, God. Bro, you know how much money the dude borrowed from TNA and the Carters, and they never saw that money again? It's like, my God, bro, what, at what point is the gig up? Like, my God, bro, seriously.
Even did it to Arn Anderson from rumor that, right, he borrowed 25 grand, and then that was the story, and then that's why him and Arn had a falling out, and I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But when Arn went to get the money, he was like, you should be, like, thanking me because I gave you a career and all this stuff, and it's just that Ponzi scheme or that pyramid scheme or whatever he does over and over again for the robes, the Rolexes, the bar tabs, TNA companies he works for. He famously said when he borrowed money off Vince and he had that match against Shawn at WrestleMania in Orlando, and literally when he came back, that check was already gone and given back to the company, which I would think is a pretty beefy check.
Yeah.
And then the other big story was that he was putting over that he went and saw his doctor, and his doctor asked him if he had had a heart attack in the last 2 years, and they diagnosed that he had the heart attack during his last match against Jarrett and Jay Lethal.
Who called that, by the way? All three of us.
Yeah, where he was down and out and passed out. That's a heart attack. And then here's this guy going, I want to die in the ring and live this Carny, I worked the bar tab and got away with it, addicted lifestyle because I can never face who I really am or what I've lost in my life because of bad decisions, or I'm on my fifth wife. And
there we go. So that's one thing now. Is it married 5 times, and I think he was even for a short period of time split up with this woman Wendy, right? And I don't know what it is with Flair. It's a lot of it maybe just does go back to maybe, I don't know, certain kind of childhood trauma. I mean, this was a guy that was adopted as a baby. I don't know if that's a large part to do with it, but there's a lot of stuff there in Flair's life that the person that we see today, you don't just just out of the blue just end up being that person. That's from over time of over years and years, all these different experiences. But it just, again, we don't know. I mean, you could say there's 3 sides to every story. It's Flair's side, it's the side of the people there at the pizza place, and then there's the truth. But from seeing all this stuff with Flair over the years of people that have said, things about him being a backstabber and other stuff about, there's all these other stories, the plane ride from hell, other allegations there, and then there's certain other allegations that I'm going to get into in a minute, but where there's smoke, there's fire is what I say. And it's like, you think this guy would have a bit more sense, considering he's working with AEW now, right? That he wouldn't be doing this shit. If he wasn't working for a wrestling organization, I'd be like, okay, maybe he's just, in a bad place and he's just a bit bitter with stuff and he's just lashed out and he's taking his anger out on these guys, even though it's not right, but I could kind of get it in a way. But I don't know, and then the whole thing about him spending £1,500 at a pizza place, I think he was with a large group of people, but so you could say, well, a large group of people there, and if they're buying a lot of drinks, you could you could end up spending about that much money at a pizza joint. Certainly not the amount of money I would ever spend, But yeah, it's just not good with Flair. And the stuff as well, I mean, Ben Hameen's got that thing, duck one, heart attack, kick out one. He's got a dark sense of humor. But the thing is though, it's funny because it's like, this is the thing with Flair. Flair would see that as a great way to go out. He feels that dying in the ring would be a great way of going out. He wouldn't want people to feel sad for him. It would be like, this would be like a celebration of he's come to the very end. And it was in a wrestling ring. And yeah, I mean the whole thing, I mean, all of a sudden, again, I don't know if just Flair's making up this stuff now, because before it was like, the whole faking a heart attack. He did that as a spot, and the other guys in the match weren't in on it. But now they're saying that no, he actually did have a heart attack during his match. And it's like, gee, I don't know. I don't know how true that is, or he's just saying that because it sounds good. It's like, I think Dusty Rhodes said, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And then there's other stuff with Flair as well. There's, Flair's mad because The Rock, because he wasn't asked to appear on the documentary, the Vice documentary, about who killed WCW. But then Rock's production company, though, at the same time, is going to be doing like a biopic of his life. So, with that, using his image, his likeness, with that movie, that's in the works. He's going to get a pretty good paycheck out of that. And supposedly, because he's like involved in like some company now with cannabis, that he's actually in a good place now financially. He's not in the red anymore, Flair, but who knows? Who knows with that guy? You just don't know. He's lived a crazy life. But the thing is, can you really sleeping with multiple women, going out, getting, ridiculously, just getting wasted all the time. Was it really that great of a life, really? He had people around him that have suffered from his choices, and, it's horrible what happened to his son, Reed. Perhaps some might say, well, he's made up for it through Charlotte and what she's done in the business, but, he's made a lot of fucked up choices in his life, but then it's when other people, innocent people, are affected by that, that's even worse, and that does make him quite kind of a scummy kind of character in the end. But he just doesn't seem to learn his lesson, does he? But there's some questionable stuff out there with Ric Flair. There's been allegations out there that over the years that Ric Flair was racist. There's a story with Teddy Long tells about him confronting Teddy Long one time back in like the late 80s, and he said, "N-word, you like working here?" And he was trying to blame Teddy Long because these like fans, or I guess they called them back in the day, rats, got in through the back door, and he was blaming Teddy Long that he allowed them in. I guess he was just using it as a reason to pick on Teddy Long. He didn't like him. And there has been a few other stories out there about saying that Ric Flair is, is he a racist? And there's an interesting story here from the Rene Dupree, the podcast he does with James. And he's he tells a very interesting story here that I don't know if other people would pick up on this or what they got from it. But this story here about he was on a chartered plane with Ric Flair. So I'm going to play this clip here.
Yeah, I saw Flair lose his temper one time at an airline pilot. We were, it was like a chartered flight, I think. It was like one of these small planes where it fits about maybe a dozen people at most, right? And Flair was going off saying that they were overweight, because don't forget, Flair had gotten into a plane crash earlier in his career, remember? When I think Johnny Valentine was paralyzed due to the same, and someone I think passed away in that plane crash, if I'm not mistaken. So he was going off on this. I was on the plane, he was on the plane. I know Teddy Long and Mark Henry both stepped off the plane because of it, because they actually got scared. But Flair was saying there was too much weight on the plane, and he was going off. And then when Mark Henry and like Teddy Long got off, he looked at me and kind of like gave me this wink with like a grin. It's the weirdest thing, yeah. But he was like pointing and going off at the pilot, arguing with him that there was too much weight on the plane and whatever.
Right, so there you go. Very interesting story there. So they're on a chartered plane. Not many people could be on the plane, limited capacity. And Ric Flair's going off, and some might say, oh, well, Ric was maybe a bit paranoid. He'd been in a plane crash before years ago. He broke his back, I believe, as a result of that. And that he was a bit paranoid over that, so he was going off on one. But the thing I get from it is that, so he's cutting a promo on the pilot, very mad, very angry. You have then Mark Henry, who leaves the plane. Teddy Long then follows suit, leaves the plane. Teddy Long, obviously a black man. Mark Henry, black man. But then just out of nowhere, Ric Flair's super mad. He's cutting a promo, but then as soon as those guys off the plane, he turns and he grins and he winks to Rene Dupree. So what do you get from that? I think it's pretty obvious where I'm going with this, right? And yeah, I mean, there's stories out there with Flair that saying that people were saying he was racist. There was maybe some stuff there like racist comments that were maybe a little bit more overt, but you could get away with it back then in the 80s, cutting promos. I think it might have been when he was maybe when he was in a feud with Tony Atlas, I believe. But yeah, there's some questionable stuff out there, the Ric Flair, and maybe it's just because, and people know really in the business what he's like, but it's just because he's up and so high at a pedestal, people just let it slide in the end. But it's just all this stuff with Flair. It's like, yeah, he can cut an entertaining promo, he can come off quite funny, but at the same time, like he's become that guy. He's become the character. He's loved the gimmick, and it's just like the little things. Even when I think back to his Hall of Fame speech, and he's going on about bloody he was like a real big bar tab that they had at the party after the SummerSlam event in Wembley. Then you've got born again Christian Shawn Michaels. He's standing up, applauding, marking out. I think maybe JBL, Michael Hayes are marking out, and it's like they just fawn all over him, this guy. And it's like, okay, I get it. He was quite good in the ring. He was an entertaining character, but it's like they treat this guy almost like he's like the second coming of Christ, and it's like steady on, steady on. Don't make a god out of this guy, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's just how it is. A lot of people in the wrestling, marks. There are marks for other guys. It's a lot of people that are in the business are the marks, and then the people watching there are the smart ones. That's what it's become that now, hasn't it, really? But yeah, I think Ric's got that old school Carny in him that, if he's screwed people out of money, owes a lot of people money, and maybe, he was going on about how Arn Anderson wasn't there for him or didn't say anything, messaged him after his son Reed passed away. Maybe that was probably the reason that he backed out and paying Arn Anderson back money. If it, could have been something quite big there, 25 grand. Maybe even that, apparently Tully Blanchard wasn't speaking to him. That was the same thing with Tully Blanchard. Tully Blanchard gave him money when he really needed it. And I think Flair said something about like Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan, and Conrad Thompson are his free real friends in life. Only free real friends, because they're the only ones that when they give him money, borrow him money, they never ask for it back. That's kind of a sad way to look at things in life, right? That they're your only free real friends because they don't ask for the money that you need from them. It's like, gee, I shudder to think being in that position in life where you got to go around asking, and you need people to bill you out and give you money, and then it's like probably with Flair gives a big sob story, big emotional type deal promo. And then in the end, when it comes time for Flair to pay back, and he just bails on them, Sad. It's sad, isn't it? I mean, that shit can happen. I play a bit of poker, a lot of stuff that's quite common in the poker world, that people do that. But it's just not a good way to live, and it's not good if he's been screwing a lot of people out of money. And then Ric Flair, he owed TNA thousands of pounds, and he's another guy that took TNA for granted, right? He buried TNA after he left. He virtually, totally buried the fuck out of TNA, but then he owed them thousands of pounds, but they never saw that, did they? But yeah, he's a Carny POS, Flair is a Carny piece of shit. As a person, Richard Flair, whatever, well, he probably doesn't even know who Richard Flair is, right, as they're saying, but no, he's not a good guy, Entertaining character, very entertaining. I'll watch old Ric Flair promos and I do crack. I'll crack a laugh, I'll smile. But as a human being, he's a scumbag. He really is. But that's my thoughts on that, guys. Feel free to hit the subscribe button, and let me know what's your thoughts on all this stuff with this altercation that Ric Flair had in the restaurant, and just Ric Flair as a person and in general. But that's me for now, guys. Thank you very much. Bye.